Happy Halloween and welcome to Tracy Mommy Reads. Today, in a different location in our game room, viewing room, TV room, whatever you want to call it, because today I'm going to be talking about a movie versus a book. Okay. So a few years back, I think it was one of the first books I maybe talked about on the channel. Not the first, but within that first year, I'm pretty sure I talked about it. And that book is The Radleys by Matt Haig. And this was on the heels of me reading his book, The Midnight Library. So I've gone down a rabbit hole and then I found, The Radleys. And the thing that made me want to read that particular book is because it was a book about vampires, okay? But there was a twist with these vampires, right? Because they were suburban, right? They lived in an English countryside, like a little town or whatever. They had two children. It was like a husband, a wife, and two children. And they were suppressing their vampirism, okay? Making it appear as if it were a choice. And let me just show you this is the cover that's currently online or whatever. And you can see the picket fence has vampire teeth at the bottom, fangs at the bottom with little blood tipped. I think the original cover, the one that I had, it was a black book, but it had a white picket fence with the blood. It wasn't colorful. It didn't have a house. But anyway, so the family in the Radleys, that's their last name, the Radleys. You have the husband, Peter, the wife, Helen. They have a daughter named Clara, and their son name is Rowan. So Clara and Rowan are teenagers, right? I think Clara's the oldest, and they're both in high school, but I'm thinking maybe there's a couple of years difference between them. Maybe Rowan is maybe a freshman or a sophomore, so which makes Clara either a junior or a senior in high school. And so let's get into the book versus the movie as we unravel what the story was about. And I will tell you right now, because I'm going to be doing some contrast and comparison, there will probably be spoilers, okay? Because there were some differences that I wasn't too keen on, but I get it, and I'll talk more about that. But again, I don't think that I'm going to be able to do it without spoilers. So if you have gotten this far, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe before you leave. But if you do decide to stay and watch, let's get into it. So, like I said, you have these vampires living in the suburban community, and it is in England. And although they have suppressed their vampirism, essentially meaning they don't drink blood or drink from humans, right? But they do a lot of rare meat, right? So that's how they get their sustenance. However, their children are sickly, because it's not enough. They need blood. And the kids, have these issues with their health. And Helen and Peter both are kind of Helen is just constantly moving and busy, so she doesn't think about, or crave it. And Peter is actually a doctor, and I think he takes a little nip at work, when people donate blood and stuff. But what kicks this off, or what the kicker for this, let me back up. Rowan and Clara, they don't know that they're vampires, because apparently it has to be once you actually taste human blood, or something happens that makes you maybe do that for the first time, that's when you get your fangs and all that. And I always think it's really interesting and kind of cool, for the premise or the basic structure of what a vampire is, a fictional character, a vampire. There are so many ways that authors present their characters, and they have so many different characteristics or things that make them different. I mean, the blood thing is pretty much common through all vampire stories that you're going to read, but they all take different things, and make their vampires, like, I guess, more memorable or stand out. I mean, every vampire story that you probably ever read, from the Twilights to the Anne Rices to the Dracula, like, there's always different elements, right? And the Radleys are no different. First of all, they can be outside. I mean, in the sun, I'm assuming, because they were outside a lot. Granted, where they were, it was kind of cloudy or whatever. But the big thing that happens to kind of like kick off the action in this story is Clara goes out to this like a party, but it was like outside, kind of a hangout or whatever, with friends from school. And there's this creepy ass boy that won't take no for an answer, and he follows her when she says she's going home and tries to force himself on her. He won't be forcing himself on nobody else, because Clara, she snapped. and that was the end of that. So, like, of course she's freaking out, because why did I just unalive this boy and drink his blood? Like, what is that? And then she notices, like, her teeth. So she calls her parents, and they come and they clean up the mess. So then from there, like, they call Peter has a brother, and what was his name? Hold on a second, let me look at my notes, because I can't remember his name. Will. Peter had a brother named Will, and he's like a practicing vampire. He's a bad boy. He doesn't give a shit about humans. And they call him to essentially clean up Clara's mess, because, they've been domesticated. They're like, what do we do with the body? Like, so he comes to help them with that situation. He lives in a trailer, a camper. He's like a nomad. He just kind of goes wherever the wind takes him. And, there's eyes on him once he comes to the community, because, like, who is this person, And one of the things, too, that in Matt Haig's story of vampires, like, whoever, like, created you always have the, and I think this is kind of similar in some other vampire stories too, but you always have this like visceral connection to them, and it's almost like you have no choice but to desire them or love them or whatever. And Will, he's the one that apparently created Helen, right? So she, with her brother-in-law coming to town, that kind of tosses things up as well. Now, I will stop here and go into the movie, right? Okay, so in the movie, the scene, like, with Clara and the boy, that was, I felt like, done very well. Just the cinematography and the optics and aesthetics and everything, I felt like were on point. The casting, not 100% on the casting, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so first of all, the actor that played Peter, right, the father, the vampire father, he was played by an actor by the name of Damian Lewis. And I actually did not have a problem with that. I think when I did fan casting, like when I first read the book, because I was still doing that back then, I had Bill Hader for the role. But, I mean, it's an English story, so using British or English actors or European actors, I mean, that makes more sense. But I didn't have a problem with him in the role of Peter, because he was a bit neurotic and, had a little paleness to him and looked a little otherworldly, like he could be a vampire, pale skin and all that stuff. What I did not like, I cannot remember in the book, but I don't think this was the case, because I feel like I would have noted that when I was doing my casting, right? They had the actor Damian Lewis just do kind of like a what do you call it? The where they play the same, like the one actor plays a dual role. So he was also Will, but just with shaggier hair and a different type of demeanor. And I just like, no. Will was no. I saw Peter. It was like looking at Peter with a wig on. I don't think he was convincing as Will, So I don't know that I bought him in that character. When I originally did the fan cast, I had Justin Theroux in that role. Somebody with a little bit more of an edge, that was a little bit more of a bad boy, a little bit more filled out, because Peter, was very thin and tall. So yeah, so I didn't like that. The mom, I mean, I feel like her role in the movie was kind of diminished. She seemed like such a secondary background character, and that wasn't the case in the book. Clara, I was okay with. I still don't know about Rowan and how I felt about that. Now, let me just tell you, so since we're on Rowan, in the book, he had a crush on Clara's best friend, a little biracial girl by the name of Eve, right? In the movie, Eve became Evan, a boy, so Rowan, was gay. And I totally don't have a problem with that, and I get they want to try to have representation in movies for various communities, because you want to see yourself in the movies or whatever, or on screen. But I don't feel like it was necessary, like, because then it had to be this secondary storyline about him kind of like not wanting people to know, and how his feelings and whether he should be liking girls and all that stuff. Whereas it was just a flow the other way around, because you didn't have to stop to explain it, if you will. And I felt like maybe if they didn't like really focus on the fact that it was a boy, just do the same thing you would have done, I guess, if it was a girl. I don't know. I just felt like that was kind of like a thing that messed up the flow of the movie. And I also don't recall in the book, Eve's dad, which in the movie would have been Evan's dad. The actor that played him, he was good, but also annoying, because he was so paranoid. And this guy's nonverbal stuff that he was doing with his, flittering in his eyes, and his wife had gone missing, and he was convinced, he used to be a police officer, he was convinced a vampire was in the mix or something had happened to her. But I don't think they ever found her body. And everybody was just like, no, she just ran off and left y'all. So, of course, when Will came to town and this boy that Clara killed went missing, and, they were looking for him, his dad was just like, no, the vampires are back, and everybody thought he was crazy. Speaking of which, in the movie, it was like Clara killed this boy. They had like, I think, half a scene where people were looking for him in the woods or whatever, and that was just the end of it. In the book, that was a thing. Like, they were looking for this boy for a while, and that's how eyes kind of came to be on them, and their uncle being there, and like, are these Radleys who we think they are. And then also in the book, the vampires, they could fly, or at least float really far and high. That wasn't discussed in the movie. The movie actually was a lot shorter than I would have liked. And I feel like that's probably, like, it was rushed, it felt like. And maybe that's why a lot of the scenes were cut. Yeah, so at the end of the day, the book was definitely better than the adaptation. And I hate that, because this story had so much potential. I personally think, and I think I even said this when I first read it and was, doing the whole fan casting, I personally think it would have been a lot better had they done a series, like a limited series. The pacing would have been better, and they could have explored more of what was going on in the book. But yeah, it was just way too rushed. It just left out and changed too many things that made the original the way, made the original as good as it was. So yeah, that's my take on it. I love the book. Didn't care for the movie at all. If you have read The Radleys by Matt Haig, I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. And then if you've watched the movie, I would love to know your thoughts. If you haven't done both of them together, I'm just interested in what your thoughts were without having one, influence your opinion of the other. Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. You guys, make sure that you like this video. And if you have not already done so, take the opportunity to go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And make sure that you share my videos with people who may enjoy my content. Be safe out there. If you have big plans this weekend for Halloween, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you next week. Bye.